What's a super sketchy US city that we never hear about? Yakima, Washington. I lived in a neighboring town for a while, and bodies would always turn up in farmers' fields that cartel in Yakima had dropped off there. Monroe, Louisiana. It's gotten the nickname Gunroe. Shootings every day, most of them unsolved. Drugs galore, especially meth and crack. Homeless everywhere. Poverty is rampant. Part of the city is an actual slum. I'd look what I was expecting when I went on this thread. I'm not American. Barely know anything about American cities. Can hardly name the US big cities. And for some reason I still went on here like, oh yeah, MHM. Very obscure American cities that even Americans don't know about. Sure, why not? North Las Vegas. Not the north of the strip, I mean the city of North Las Vegas. I used to work there at a 7-over-11. It's effing rough. Meth addicts, crime, homeless everywhere, and gang activity. Las Vegas has some hoods, but Northtown is probably the worst. Although the Boulder Highway crew can chime in. I remember when I took classes at CSN. My friends were all like, avoid the NLV campus, and I decided to take a class at that campus. That started at 6 p.m. and ended at 9 p.m. Thinking it won't be that bad. It was bad. It always felt super sketchy leaving class. Daytona Beach, FL. Imagine a bunch of alcoholic high school kids came for spring break in 1984 and never left and never grew up. Hawaii. If you aren't from there, stick to the tourist areas. They do not like outsiders. Old BFF's parents and sister moved back to Hawaii. Her dad is damn near full Hawaiian. The family gave them the use of a house that they collectively own. Even still, the neighbors would break into their house and steal shit every time they left. Another friend's brother was beat up every day on the bus. He would spend the whole bus ride face down on the floor with a foot on his back. I always tell people Hawaii is great to visit. Sucks to live. It's a beautiful island, and honestly, despite the sketchy places, I love the people. Lived there for a few years and miss it. But the huge difference between then and now. I was a kid and didn't feel the sting of how damn expensive everything is, and poverty can really make people do shitty things. Heck, even the nice public schools I went to only had room set textbooks. No AC. Calculators were a special occasion. We had 4-day school weeks and a short day on Wednesday. Because the teachers were all furloughed, we called it Furloughed Friday. Things are rough outside the tourist areas, and this was in Honolulu, not even the poorer areas of the islands. Most of my teachers told us stories of working in the sugarcane fields to make money as kids. Brownsville, Alabama ice smithy. Dead bodies turn up all the time. If you are African American, Culminale is sketchy and dangerous. Filled with backwoods racists with law enforcement that look the other way. Saginaw. Me. My company NCA has a client in Saginaw, and there is a lady from the client's office who calls me occasionally, and she always says, "This is Betty calling from Saginaw." Me when I answer the phone. It's weird. She doesn't say the name of the company she works for, just always tells me she's from Saginaw. It's an upper Midwest thing. Everyone pretends they and everyone else live in towns of 200 people and first name. Hometown is enough to identify anyone in the country, and you definitely know them through some sort of family relation. Stockton, CA. There's also Fresno, CA. Both are sketchy AF. You can easily tell when you hit the ghetto in both places, as suddenly there are bars on all the house windows. I visited Denver, and while I quite enjoyed Denver proper downtown, the motel I stayed at in Aurora, which is I guess a satellite town that got swallowed by Denver, was some shockingly sketchy schlol. Sign on the door telling guests to keep their rooms locked at all times. Signs of multiple previous break-ins. Cages on the windows and counters of the liquor store and gas station across the street. Styled cars with 20 inches chrome rims rolling around the block constantly. Good times. Everybody points to the well-known poster boy of urban failure known as East St. Louis, but few people talk about its forgotten, abused and downtrodden cousin further down the river at the very tip of the state, Cairo, Illinois. But probably the most disturbing place I've driven through in the past 2 years would be along the southern town's ringing Lake Okeechobee, such as the cesspool, known as Belglade, Florida. It's the kind of place where everyone seems to just mill about in the streets or on the corners in front of abandoned businesses, hanging around all day, and everyone stops what they are doing and just stare at you silently as you drive past. And I guess Louisiana has plenty of skeevy places that some may say have a certain charm, but I prefer to think they have a distinctive stink. Lake Charles is a pretty sus place, as is Bastrop and Mansfield, but for my money the sketchiest part of the state I've been in would be Morgan City, Louisiana, which immediately gave off some serious Deliverance vibes to me, and I know the F out of there. Harrison, Arkansas has for a few decades been tagged as one of the most racist cities in America, and like many other historically sundown towns, finding it a hard reputation to shake. And people know/talk about Harrison, but there are other cities nearby that are creepier. The entire region of northwest/north central Arkansas and south central Missouri has some beautiful scenery, but it is also home to one of the most homogeneously white populations in the entire country outside of Maine. And while I'm as lily white as they come, I just felt downright uncomfortable the whole time I was there, visiting the Ozark NSR. And the place that gave me the most non-specific creepy crawlers feeling of being a stranger in a strange land was West Plains, Missouri. 96% white, and the meth, too. And let's not forget the other side of the country, which has its share of sketchy places, like Brawley or Calexico or Blythe. But the worst place I ever spent the night in California would be the mad maximum meth wasteland of Adelanto, California. Makes nearby Victorville look like utopia in comparison. Coolidge, Arizona, more of a town than a city, but it's such a weird place, bordering on Twilight Zone. You'll see a meth house right next to a youth theater. Maryvale, as it's a neighborhood/urban village of Phoenix. Used to be nice. My mom grew up there in the 70s, until they found a huge chemical waste dump that was raising cancer rates in the area through the roof. The affluent households read, white people, fled in droves, and now Scaravale is just blighted. It's not the kind of neighborhood you want to be in after dark. My grandma stayed in the neighborhood until her last few years. Moved out when someone broke into her house on Thanksgiving. I get such a sense of sadness driving through it. Also, South Phoenix, South Phoenix, Lavine is sketchy as hell. Peoria, IL. I hear all the time how back in the day the town was a hotspot for companies who were trying to find a market for their product and services. The town even has a slogan: if it plays in Peoria it plays anywhere, because of how diverse of market it used to be. Now it's just a couple manufacturing companies and your standard slow of retail and small businesses. But what I think makes it worthy of being here is the fact that with barely over 100,000 people in it, we are consistently in the top 10 cities in the US for murder and crime. East anything, East Palo Alto, East Oakland, East Side San Jose, apparently East Street, Louis, which I just found out about on this thread. East LA used to be bad, but my point stands. Avoid cities with East in the name lol. I wrote a paper about this phenomenon when I was in college. I never did come up with a satisfying explanation. It holds true in many European cities as well. The only semi-plausible thing I could come up with is that, very broadly speaking, winds are from the west, and many cities also have rivers flowing west to east. So very generally, it's the eastern side of cities that are going to have fouler air and water. So that's where the lower socioeconomic classes will be pushed to. I offer my own city, Cedar Rapids, Iowa. It's not all bad, it's just a really sad, off little place that doesn't at all behave like a city of its population. We can't keep basic things any city has open. Even before the pandemic, before the flood, it's like nobody here does anything but drink. And it smells like a butt. I really have a weird relationship with this city and it's hard to put into words. There's not a lot that keeps me here, and I swore I'd never come back, but somehow it happened, and I got a good job. I'm not unhappy. In general, I just don't like this place. Fresno, California. It's the largest city in the US that doesn't have an interstate running through it for reasons. 500,000 people live in the city limits. The greater metro area is north of 650k, and the US government claims the MSA has 1 million. It's the nearest large city to 3 different national parks, and would presumably be able to poly that into some sort of economic benefit. But nope, it's the poorest city above 500k in the United States, essentially West Appalachia. The weather is miserable, the air quality is there's a total lack of any real arts scene. It's incredibly violent. There is a serious drug problem. The downtown area looks like the Air Force bombed it, and all the whites fled 10 miles north decades ago.